So this is where you plan to do it?
As good a place as any.
At least have the balls to call this what it is. Murder.
The bone-rattling echo of a gunshot resonates throughout the wide expanse of the Georgia wilderness as Rick looks at his chest only to notice an ever-expanding splotch of red. Then suddenly, a sharp and burning pain could be felt as he looked at Shane with a shocked expression. Rick then falls to his knees as he felt his consciousness slipping away. His final thoughts were of Lori, Carl, his yet-to-be-born infant, and how his best friend betrayed him. He then falls to the ground, face first, as Shane stands there, clearly emotionally torn over his decision to kill his childhood friend. He then quickly notices his hands are trembling. He then comes to the realization that there's no coming back from this. He killed Rick, and if Lori ever found out, she'd never forgive him. But there wasn't any time left to think. Shane had to get moving. He grabs Rick's gun and his knife, and he begins to head towards the direction of the farmhouse. But then, it happened. He hears a soft growl as the sound of grass rustling behind him grabs his attention. It's Rick, and he's up on his feet, to Shane's surprise. Shane gazes into Rick's eyes, and he realizes the truth. Rick is now a walker, despite not being bit. After slapping himself in the face, he reaches for his gun and shoots the zombie Rick in the head. What the hell is going on? Shane thinks to himself. Dad? Carl asks with a gasp, taking Shane by surprise. Carl had found Shane just as he was shooting zombie Rick. Carl begins to cry as he attempts to get closer to his father's corpse, but Shane grabs him and explains to him that Rick was bit. Carl saw that his dad was a zombie, but being the child that he wasn't yet ready to see his dad as a walker, and he certainly wasn't ready to see his dad get domed. Carl wanted closure, but Shane insisted they return to the house. To Shane, this came as a massive relief. He now has an excuse for shooting Rick, and that excuse can be backed by the eyewitness testimony of his son. Meanwhile, back at Herschel's home, Daryl and Glenn return from their trek in the woods. Daryl asks everyone where Rick and Shane are, to which Lori explains that they have yet to return. Daryl explains that they heard a gunshot. Lori hypothesizes that it might be Shane or Rick shooting at Randall, but Daryl explains that Randall had his neck snapped, and that he turned without being bit. Most concerning of all, Dixon explains that Shane's tracks were right next to Randall's the entire way, meaning that Shane was there when Randall had died. This causes Lori to worry for Rick, as she then asks Daryl to find the two missing men. As all of this was happening, Shane and Carl were walking at a brisk pace back to the farmhouse. Shane, being paranoid about what had just transpired, checks his six routinely. What if Daryl or Glenn saw what happened? What if people know the truth? These worries immediately take a backseat to what Shane notices off in the far distance. A massive herd of walkers can be seen headed for the farm. Instead of running to the nearby barn and lighting it up on fire like Rick did in the main timeline, Shane picks up Carl and runs towards the house. He wants to prioritize Lori's safety first. On the other hand, the Atlanta group steps outside and sees the herd coming. They debate whether leaving or fighting is the best option, but Herschel is resolute in his desire to defend his home, a home that was passed down many generations. Hence, the group opts to fight until such a defense is no longer tenable. But without a burning barn, the herd remains undistracted and a larger number of walkers begins to descend on the farmhouse. The group mounts an admirable but desperate defense, but it becomes obvious to everyone that the farm will be lost to the undead. Shane quickly grabs Lori and gets her and Carl into a truck. He then tells Herschel to leave, but Herschel refuses and Shane doesn't waste any time trying to save him. As Shane gets back into the truck, Lori asks him where Rick is. But before Shane can say anything, Carl states that his dad was bit and that Shane shot the zombified Rick Grimes. In a moment of disbelief, Lori asks Carl if she saw Rick as a walker, to which Carl nods his head with tears flowing down his eyes. This admission shocks Lori. But then what Daryl told her about Randall starts to replay itself in her mind, over and over again. Randall was killed. Neck snapped. No bites. Yet he turned? What if Rick was shot by Shane? No bites. And then he turned. She decides to stay silent about the issue out of fear of Shane. As the farm gets overwhelmed, Herschel gets overrun, along with Andrea and Beth's mom. Maggie, Glenn, and Beth make it out in a vehicle, whereas Daryl saves Carol. They all opt to head back to the highway, as they did in the canonical timeline. Lori begs Shane to wait at the highway, and so does Carl, but he refuses. That is until Lori threatens to jump out of the moving truck. After this bold gambit, Shane capitulates to Lori's desires. Eventually, the group reunites beside the highway where they left Sophia a care package. As the group embraces and mourns the loss of multiple survivors, Daryl approaches Shane but keeps his distance. He then verbally confronts Shane about Randall. As he does this, he raises his crossbow and asks him why his tracks were next to a dead Randall. Why was his neck snapped? What was the origin of the gunshot? Why does he have Rick's gun, and why is Rick missing? Lori also reaches for her sidearm, finally feeling safe to voice her concerns. Shane attempts to claim that Rick was bit, but Lori and Daryl just aren't buying the story. Shane then breaks, explaining that he had to kill Rick to keep the group safe and to keep Lori and Carl safe, but this makes Lori snap, as she yells to Shane that Rick always tried to work things out with him. She screams at him that her son and upcoming baby will never be his, especially after this. Daryl then adds to this verbal scuffle that Shane's gunshot is precisely what drew the herd to the farm, that had he not killed Rick, they'd all be safe right now. Shane can tell he's about to lose everything, so he reaches for his pistol only to be shot in the chest by Daryl's crossbow. As Shane bleeds out, Daryl kicks the gun out of his hands and stands on his chest. Everyone is shocked, but Daryl explains that the group wouldn't be safe with a murderer in their ranks. Not long after, Shane reanimates, shocking everyone. He is then quickly re-killed, and the group learns a harsh truth about the new world. Everyone turns, even when they die without being bitten. And just like that, the curtain closes on this what if. It is now up to Daryl to lead the group, a group that is down 2 cops, a medic/farmer, and a group that lost Andrea permanently. A harsh winter is coming, and their odds of survival are grim without Rick Grimes at the helm. My guess would be that most of the group will perish this winter, until some of them make it to and join Woodbury. Anyone who makes a what if where Shane kills Rick and gets away with it somehow is just not writing a logical story. Shane was never going to make it, even if he killed Rick at that moment. And without Rick, the group pretty much gets cooked during the winter. For Shane to make it past Season 2 in any what if, he either has to leave the group or he has to be redeemed. Shane winning over Rick means everyone loses, including Shane. Anyways, that pretty much concludes this gold standard Walking Dead video. If you enjoy this sort of content, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit that notification icon so that you may be notified when I publish a new video. Last, but certainly not least, please consider becoming a channel member. It's super affordable and it allows me to continue entertaining you. Oh, and remember that you may opine anytime if you feel so inclined, down in the comment section. I'm Captain Gold and I hope to see you in my next video.